Welcome to my channel. I am Jonah MacTavish-Slaton, and today I want to look at my genetic comparison to regional populations. Now, a quick overview. When we were talking about genetics, we're talking mainly autosomal genetics. We're talking about what is our DNA consist of as in relation to other people and populations around the world. This is different than your haplogroup, which is just your paternal, your father's lineage that gets passed down. There are many different types of companies out there that does genetics, such as Heritage, Family Tree, DNA, Ancestry, 23andMe, DNA Genetics. So there's tons of companies that out there that will test your DNA, analyze your DNA. But one thing to understand is the fact that they use their own algorithms, and a lot of their data is people testing and where these people are found. So that's why you could take 10 different DNA tests with 10 different genetic testing companies and come up with 10 different percentages. Now, you should still have the same population groups reporting, but you could see that the percentages are quite different. So with what's on the screen here is the genetic comparison to regional populations. I like this one better because it gives me the genetic distance to my ancestors. So this is really what my genetics via my ancestry shows. So it's not really a percentage of Irish or Scottish or Danish or whatever. It is a genetic distance to these people that are more related to me through genetics. The distance calculator for this one in particular goes from 1 all the way up to whatever, 10, 20. But 1 through 3 is this is, anything below 4 is a direct relationship. These are your family. 4 to 6 is these are ancestors that would be in the mix, and you're related to this population genetically. Anything that's 7 to 9 is distantly related, but when you get above 10, you're really not related to that population. You just share common genetic characteristics. So this right here shows, this is kind of a regional, this is a European area that I share these genetics with these people. So at the top of the list, number 1 ranked is Orcadian. Orcadian is a mix of Irish and Scottish people. So this is Gaelic and Pictish people with a Scandinavian admix. So this is the Norse admix, the Swedish, Danish, Norwegic DNA being brought in, this Nordic DNA. That is what, according to the calculator, this Oracle calculator, this is what I mostly relate to, would be people found in the Orkney Islands, possibly even Shetland and other parts of the Scottish Islands, such as the Hebrides. I would be closely related to them. It's 2.82 is the genetic distance. Number 2 is Irish at 3.09. Number 3 is Scottish at 3.11. So if you see that, you can understand that I'm very closely related to both the Irish and Scottish. That's where all my recent ancestry comes from. And it's really awesome because you can see those two groups and their DNA mix is actually what is very reliable to the Orcadians that were probably originally Pictish, and they would have Gaelic Scots from Ireland move in. And then later they would have the Scandinavian admix with the Norse that would come in. At 4 is the English. Now, this classification of English, you have to understand that this is not totally Germanic. So there would be Anglo-Saxon, Judish, Frisian, Danish, Swedish, Yiddish, Judish people from the Germanic sense. It's also the Brythonic Celts that are very much related to the peoples of Ireland and Wales and Scotland. So this is a probably late Bronze Age, early Iron Age Celtic people that were coming over through Gaul and Central Europe. And obviously the hunter-gatherers and the Neolithic farmers that were before the Metal Age peoples, that would also be brought up in that. At number 5 is Danish at 3.51. Number 6 is Norwegian. And you would expect that because of that Scandinavian admix. Number 7 is German. I do have I think like a 4th or 5th great-grandparent way back in that has German in them. On my dad's mother's side, on my grandmother's side, through the Davis line and through that channel of the family history. Next is Belgium. And Belgium has a combination of Celtic and Germanic peoples, and they would be very similar to people from Germany, also Denmark, and Britain. Next is the Dutch, which is also very similar to the Belgium and German, and also Britain. And at number 10 is Swedish. So that is the people that I'm closely related to, ranked 1 through 10. I think the only surprising thing would probably not to see the Welsh in there. But once again, the modern Welsh in this calculator, I don't know how many people have been part of the genome testing groups for this. Okay, so if you want to say who I am, I'm an Orcadian. I'm an Irish, Scottish, Norse mixed individual. This lines up perfect with the family history and our genealogy and our ancestry. Okay, so the next report is a genetic comparison to modern population groups. So this is not a region, this is a genetic population group. This is down to a provincial or county consideration. But as well, there will be nations in there that don't match this. So what am I? 1 through 5, you belong to this population genetically. You have ancestry and autosomal genomes, genetics from these groups. 6 through 10, you are related to this population, but further back. You're number 10 through 15 of genetic distancing. It's a very distant. 15 through 20, you may be related, and then so forth. But you get it. 1 through 5, this is your population group. 6 through 10, you are related to this population group. So, at number 1, out of all the people in the world, if you were going to go down to a group level, a provincial or state or sectional area, I would be more kin. My genetics match the people of Connacht in Ireland, so the west of Ireland, 2.89. And that is a little bit not surprising, but that shows that I inherited a couple of groups. One of the groups that are in this area would be the O'Hurleys. Now, the O'Hurleys would leave this area and would go to Cork. So that is some of the connection to Connacht, is the O'Hurleys. Great-grandmother of mine was an O'Hurley. The next connection is my grandfather's mother, who her family hailed from the region of Castlebar in County Mayo. And they were originally on Achill Island, and they left Achill and came over back into the mainland because of hardships and would settle near Castlebar in Mayo. So these genetics that I inherited through my great-grandmother, the O'Golan, would probably why this is so high. Number 2 is the Scottish Highlands. Now, this is a generic form. This is calculating the entire Highlands. And so that would be 3.13. That would be my second highest population group. Third is Scottish Grampian. This is a mountain range in the Highlands, and it's 3.15. Number 4 is Kent. Now, these are color-coded. Green is Irish, blue is Scottish, orange is English, French is pink, Welsh is a darker green, and Dutch German is yellow, and then the red's going to be Norse or Scandinavian. So if you're looking down the list, that's what that means. So going down Kent. Now, this is surprising because, most of us have genetic. If you're from Scotland or Ireland or even Wales, you're going to have some bits of English in you. And now we're not talking about Anglo-Saxon English all the time. What we're talking about is the Brythonic Celtic peoples that would be found all over Britain, north and south, and in Ireland. So sometimes this comes out in modern populations, and so it shows a kindred. But Kent is very surprising. My best guess would be that this is the Jutish people, the people that were the Jutes that settled the kingdom of Kent. These people came from northern Judas Peninsula, which is named after them, that the Danes took over. And they also, in my opinion, came from southern Sweden with the Geats. So these people would come over during the so-called Anglo-Saxon invasion, but it was the Jutes that might have that were invited and came to southern Britain first, before England or Scotland or Wales was even thought of in the terms of names. So kind of surprising to see that, but then again, I think this is a Jutish, Geatish, Swedish connection. At number 5 is Scottish Dumfries and Galloway. At 3.31, there is family connections there on my mother's side, obviously. Then Shetland in Scotland. And this goes back to, this Orcadian grouping. And that's at 3.35. Number 7 is Irish Ulster. So this is kind of a glimpse over. This is all of Ulster, but it's probably mainly Donegal. And from the O'Cours family, my great-grandparents, the O'Cours and the Campbells there. And then on my grandfather's side, through the MacTavishes that would leave, they had were originally in Ireland, probably around the 500s, 600s. They ended up in Dalriada before the Kingdom of Scotland came about, and then they were there for over 1,000 years, and then they would come back into Ulster, into Ireland, and would be a couple of generations in Antrim, and some of that family would still remain to this day. Now next is Irish, and it's Leinster at 3.52, and then at number 9 is Fife, is Scottish, that area. Number 10 is Cork and Kerry at 3.55. Like I said, the O'Hurleys would move into Cork, and then the McShanes and would be in the Cork and Kerry area as well. And that's other grandparents' lines. Number 11 is Scottish Borders, and number 12 is Irish Munster. So this is the overall grouping of the Providence versus Cork and Kerry as more of a detailed lineup. Number 13 is French and West France. Now this probably is a combination of Norman Franks, these Norse and Frankish peoples, but it could also be pointing toward a Brythonic Celt people from southern Britain called the Bretons in Brittany. These would be people very closely related to the people that stayed behind, such as in Wales and Cornwall. And that goes to the next one, is Cornwall, England. And now this would be Brythonic Celts. This is not a Germanic Anglo-Saxon people. This is a Celtic people that were living in southern Britain. At 15 is Orcadian from Orkney. Now, it's kind of weird to see this so low on the list, but you have to understand that this is pinpointing populations. So overall, Orcadian I'm closest to as a overall regional area, but when you're going into specific groups, you don't have that. So that's why it's down lower on the list. But this is another one in Scotland, in Orkney. Number 16 is, the Welsh from Wales. This is at 5.25. 17 is Dutch and North Germanic. We know that's in my family. My grandmother line, the Skeltons were from an area of Western Germany and Eastern Netherlands, this northeastern part of Holland, and that would be married in that line. At number 18 and 19, you see that this is the Scandinavian and Norse connections, the Danish, Denmark, and southern Sweden connection, and the 19 is Norway, the Norwegians. And number 20 is Scottish, and it's Argyll and Bute. Now, I find that Argyll being that low on the list is very surprising, but I understand that a lot of these ancestors would leave Argyll and would come over into Dumfries and Galloway. They would come into Fife. They would go to the borders. And then a lot of them would end up in Ireland and Ulster and Leinster. So that would be all these people left. And finally, they would be married into these Irish lines or other Scottish lines. And they would lose some of the genetics that make up the Argyll genetic group base. So these are the people that I'd be closely related to today. Number one, Connacht region in Ireland. Number two would be the Scottish Highlands overall. And then number three, the Scottish Grampian, this mountain range there. Number four would be Kent, England, Jutish, probably the Jutes, the Geats. Number five, Dumfries and Galway in Scotland. Number six is Shetland in Scotland. Number seven is Ulster in Ireland. Number eight is Leinster in Ireland. Number nine is Fife in Scotland. Number 10 is Cork and Kerry in Ireland. Number 11 is the Borders in Scotland. Number 12 is Munster in Ireland. Number 13 is West France. Number 14 is Cornwall in England. Number 15 is Orkney in Scotland. Number 16 is Wales. Number 17 is the Dutch and North Germanic. Number 18 is Denmark and Sweden. Number 19 is the Norwegians from Norway. And number 20 is Scottish from Argyll and Bute in Scotland. So this is my genetics. Going back to the first page, as a regional base, Orcadian, which is an Irish, Scottish, Scandinavian admix, with my two closest overall is Ireland and Scotland, with a lot of below that would be the Danish, the Norwegians, Germans, and so forth, that Germanic lines that would be brought in. So there you have it. That's very fascinating to break it down and use these calculators from people that are testing these areas that have their great-grandparents came from these areas, and that is their genetic group, and this is who I would be closest related to. So out of all I've tried a lot of different genetic testing companies. I've tried Heritage, I tried Family Tree, DNA, I've done 23andMe, ancestry.com, DNA Genetics, tried a lot, GEDmatch, and all their tools and calculators, but I like this one the best. It's taken from one of the GEDmatch tools that shows you your genetic distancing, and I believe that tool is the best representation of someone's autosomal makeup of all their great-grandparents' lines back and back. That this is what's filtered down into me, and this is what I've retained. Now, you have to understand some of this is random inheritance. So sometimes you may have an Irish mother and a German father, and you may inherit more German than the Irish. Or you may have a father that's half Scottish, half Welsh, and a mother that's, a quarter Irish and, half English and a quarter Scandinavian. But yet you may only inherit all the Irish, or with a little bit of Scottish, or vice versa. So I like this calculator because this tells me what genetic DNA that I have captured through to me from my ancestry from several generations back. So it's pretty amazing to look at these calculators, and gives you a better position of where you are, and not looking at, are you 60% Scottish or and 30% Norwegian or whatever. That's all cool, but these calculators that use this percentage, I don't think is entirely accurate based on regional and then local groupings like these two reports. So cool stuff. I'm going to share a few more of these reports, these Oracle calculators that dig in even deeper or explore different areas of my genetics that you too can use in your own DNA if you've been tested by one of the major companies, and you can take that DNA and upload it to GEDmatch or DN Genetics and run this information. So really cool stuff. As always, thanks for watching my channel. I am Jonah MacTavish-Slaton. Up the Irish and up the Scots, and of course, up the Norse.